What in the absolute fuck are you doing here? The question, sharp and venomous, sliced through the curated elegance of the St. Regis ballroom in Aspen. It was aimed like a sniper's bullet, designed to kill the mood, to wound, to draw blood in front of the world's most powerful people. If you're just joining me, you have tuned in at the exact moment a story of epic revenge begins. I need you to do 3 things for me right now. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment the word payback down below. Because what you are about to witness is a masterclass in calculated destruction. The air, previously filled with the gentle murmur of billion-dollar conversations and the clinking of crystal flutes, suddenly grew heavy and still. 200 of the global tech and finance elite, gathered for the annual Aspen Summit Charity Gala, turned as one. Their gazes, a mixture of shock and predatory curiosity, locked onto the unfolding drama. Serafina Rojas stood by the grand fireplace, the flickering flames casting a warm glow on her cool, composed features. At 47, she possessed a stillness that was often mistaken for meekness, a fatal error for those who crossed her. Her gown was a simple, bespoke column of midnight blue silk, a deliberate whisper in a room full of screams. She had spent decades building an empire in the shadows, amassing a fortune that would make these self-important peacocks choke on their champagne. Tonight, she was an observer, a ghost in the machine, precisely as she had planned. The voice belonged to Brittany van der Sloot. At a mere 29, Brittany was the tech world's latest enfant terrible, a startup CEO whose face was plastered across the covers of Forbes and Wired. Her dress was a blinding confection of neon pink chiffon, a statement piece that shrieked for attention. Her platinum blonde hair was sculpted into an architectural marvel, and her smile was a weapon, all teeth and no warmth. "I'm serious," Brittany continued, her voice amplified by the sudden, dead silence. "Did you follow the catering truck in? I didn't realize they were letting the help mingle with the guests now." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Phones, previously tucked away, were now being discreetly raised, their lenses aimed like weapons. The string quartet, as if sensing the shift in atmospheric pressure, faltered, their melody dying in the charged air. Serafina's expression remained placid, a tranquil lake beneath which a leviathan stirred. Her dark eyes, however, held a flicker of something ancient and cold, a promise of a coming ice age that Brittany, in her youthful arrogance, was utterly blind to. "Good evening, Brittany." Serafina's voice was low and smooth, like single malt scotch poured over velvet. "Oh, don't you dare good evening me!" Brittany sneered, the sound like grinding glass. "This is a private event, for innovators, for people shaping the future. What could you possibly have to contribute? Did you get lost on your way to a diversity hire mixer?" The silence stretched, becoming a physical presence in the room. 200 pairs of eyes darted between the young, flamboyant CEO and the quiet, elegant woman she was attempting to humiliate. This was blood in the water, and the sharks were circling, their smartphones recording every delicious, career-ending moment. Serafina offered a small, almost imperceptible smile. It was not a smile of amusement, but of finality. It was the smile of a chess master who sees the checkmate 20 moves away. Brittany had just tipped over the first domino in a chain reaction she couldn't possibly comprehend. She had mistaken a sleeping dragon for a statue, and she was about to get burned. The following Tuesday dawned cold and gray, the kind of raw November morning that makes Boston's granite buildings seem to weep with condensation. A biting wind whipped off the harbor, chasing discarded newspapers down the historic lanes of the financial district. Serafina Rojas stepped out of a common yellow taxi, paid the driver in cash, and pulled the collar of her simple wool coat tighter around her neck. She looked like any other professional woman heading to a mid-level job, her appearance a carefully constructed camouflage of deliberate mediocrity. Before her stood the formidable edifice of Sterling, Finch and Associates, a 100-year-old private wealth management firm that was a monument to old money and impenetrable tradition. Its name was carved into the stone facade in severe, unforgiving letters. The building itself was a fortress of capitalism, its lobby a hushed temple of mahogany, brass, and inherited privilege. Serafina had been meticulously planning this day for 2 years. She had acquired the institution 3 months ago, not through a public merger, but through a slow, silent, and vicious hostile takeover, executed through a labyrinth of shell corporations, offshore holding companies, and anonymous investment vehicles. The old guard at Sterling, Finch and Associates had been bled dry without ever seeing the predator stalking them. They had no idea that their new owner, their new ultimate authority, was about to walk through their front door. The heavy brass and glass doors swung open, and Serafina stepped inside. Her sensible, low-heeled shoes made almost no sound on the ridiculously plush Persian rug that covered the marble floor. The air smelled of lemon oil and ancient money. She wore a simple gray dress, a string of understated pearls her only jewelry. She was invisible, and that was her weapon. Behind the massive, intimidating reception desk sat a young woman who looked as if she had been grown in a laboratory specifically for this role. Her name tag read Tiffany. 25, maybe 26, with a severe blonde bob and a pearl necklace that was just a little too ostentatious. She radiated the smug confidence of someone who believed her proximity to wealth was the same as possessing it herself. "Good morning," Tiffany chirped, her smile a pre-programmed customer service facsimile of warmth. The smile faltered, then vanished completely as her eyes scanned Serafina from head to toe. The assessment was instantaneous, brutal, and entirely based on a lifetime of cultivated prejudice. The warmth was replaced by a frosty professionalism. "Can I help you?" "Yes," Serafina said, her voice calm and pleasant. "I'd like to speak with the managing director, Mr. Finch." Tiffany's perfectly plucked eyebrows arched in surprise and disdain. "Do you have an appointment?" The question was loaded, implying that the very idea was preposterous. "No, I don't, but I assure you he will want to see me. It's regarding a potential 9-figure portfolio transfer." The number was a lure, a piece of bait thrown into the water to see how the sharks would react. Tiffany's skepticism was a physical thing, a sour mask that settled over her features. Her gaze lingered on Serafina's simple coat, the inexpensive leather of her handbag, the lack of a brand-name watch on her wrist. The calculations she was making had nothing to do with finance, and everything to do with class, race, and assumption. "I'm very sorry," Tiffany said, her tone dripping with condescension. "But Mr. Finch has a very demanding schedule. He meets only with pre-vetted clients who have been referred by our existing partners." "I understand," Serafina replied, her patience an unshakable wall. "Perhaps you could simply let him know I'm here. My name is Serafina Rojas." "That won't be possible." Tiffany's voice became colder, more dismissive. She was enjoying this, the small surge of power that came from denying access. "If you'd like to fill out a prospective client inquiry form, someone from our junior services team can reach out to you in the next 4 to 6 weeks to discuss your situation." The word situation was left to hang in the air, a verbal sneer that suggested homelessness, debt, or some other unfortunate circumstance. Around the lobby, a few junior associates glanced over, their expressions a mixture of pity and contempt. This was a show, and Serafina was the unwilling star. Brad Peterson, the floor manager, emerged from a nearby hallway. He was in his late 30s, with a face that was already starting to show the effects of a life of smug entitlement. He saw Tiffany's expression and immediately moved in, smelling a problem he could solve with a heavy dose of authority. "Is there an issue here, Tiffany?" he asked, deliberately ignoring Serafina, as if she were a piece of furniture. "This woman," Tiffany explained, her voice low and conspiratorial, "is insisting on seeing Mr. Finch without an appointment. She's making some rather unbelievable claims about her assets." Brad turned his full attention to Serafina, his eyes performing the same condescending calculus Tiffany's had. His assessment was swift and merciless. "Ma'am," he began, his tone the one you'd use on a child or a simpleton. "This is a private investment bank. We don't offer retail services. If you're looking to open a checking account, there's a Bank of America on the next block. They'd be better equipped to handle your needs." The casual cruelty, the baked-in assumption of her insignificance, was a familiar weight. It was the same dismissal she had faced in boardrooms, at country clubs, and in negotiation halls for her entire career. But today was different. Today, she didn't just hold all the cards. She owned the entire casino. "I understand your protocols," she said, her voice impossibly quiet. "Perhaps I could simply wait in your client lounge while you confirm Mr. Finch's availability. I'm prepared to discuss the liquidation and transfer of a $100 million portfolio." The number landed in the silent lobby like a bomb. $100 million. Tiffany and Brad exchanged a flicker of a glance. Their ingrained prejudice was now at war with their ingrained greed. Greed won, but just barely. "Very well," Brad sighed, as if doing her a massive favor. "You can wait over there, but I can't promise anything." The VIP client lounge on the 25th floor was a masterpiece of corporate intimidation. The chairs were upholstered in Italian leather so soft it felt obscene. The walls were adorned with abstract paintings that were clearly, aggressively expensive. The panoramic view of Boston Harbor was a reminder that you were at the top of the world, a place most people could only dream of. Serafina was led to a single chair in a secluded corner, deliberately placed out of the main sightline. It was the seat for people you weren't sure about, a holding pen for the questionable. She settled in, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. An hour passed. Not a single person offered her a glass of water, a cup of coffee, or even a simple acknowledgement. She watched through the floor-to-ceiling glass walls as employees bustled past. Their glances lingered, filled with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. They were watching a zoo animal, something out of its natural habitat. Finally, Tiffany appeared. She was carrying a cheap styrofoam cup. The coffee within was lukewarm, the dregs from a pot that had clearly been sitting for hours. A greasy film floated on the surface, and the cup itself was slightly damp. "Sorry about the wait," Tiffany said, her voice entirely devoid of apology. "Mr. Finch is in a series of critical meetings with his most important clients." She placed the cup on the edge of the table, making sure her fingers didn't come close to touching Serafina's. "Of course," Serafina replied, taking a small, polite sip of the vile liquid without flinching. "How much longer do you think it will be?" she asked. Tiffany shrugged. "It's hard to say. People with real money take up a lot of time, you know?" The insult was delivered with a placid smile, a stiletto blade wrapped in silk. It was designed to sound like a casual observation while landing with the force of a physical blow. Serafina simply nodded and continued to wait. The silence in the lounge was its own form of torture, a constant reminder of her perceived unworthiness. 2 hours after her arrival, Brad Peterson returned. He carried a tablet and wore the grim expression of an IRS auditor about to ruin someone's life. He didn't sit with her. He stood over her, A deliberate power move. "All right, Ms. Rojas, is it?" he began, deliberately mispronouncing her name. "You've made a significant claim. We need to perform some preliminary due diligence. I'm going to need to see documentation of these supposed assets, account statements, brokerage reports, letters of credit. We have to verify the source of all potential funds. You understand, of course." The questions came in a rapid-fire barrage, each one more loaded than the last. Where did this money come from? Was it inherited? Was it from a settlement? What firms had she worked with? Her answers were calm, precise, and utterly truthful, yet each one was met with a fresh wave of suspicion. "You have to appreciate our position," Brad continued, his tone becoming even more patronizing. "We have extremely stringent compliance protocols. We have to be vigilant about things like money laundering, offshore tax evasion, fraud. We can't just take a person's word when they walk in off the street and claim to be a millionaire." Through the glass wall, Serafina could see other employees gathering. They weren't even trying to be discreet. Their whispered conversations were audible, their laughter sharp and cruel. "Doesn't look like she has $100, let alone 100 million. Probably a scam artist, wasting everyone's time. I give her 10 more minutes before security throws her out." Serafina's composure was absolute, a mask of iron. But beneath the surface, a cold, precise anger was being forged. She discreetly pulled out her phone and typed a single encrypted message to her chief counsel. "Julian, initiate Phase 1. Document everything. Timestamp every interaction." "Is there a problem with my credentials?" she asked Brad, her voice still impossibly calm. He leaned back, crossing his arms. The condescension was practically dripping from him. "It's just unusual. Our clients come to us through established channels, referrals from families we've worked with for generations, people we know can meet our investment minimums." "And what are your minimums?" $25 million, he said, the number delivered like a punch. He expected her to recoil, to stammer, to finally admit defeat and shuffle out in shame. Serafina simply nodded. "That shouldn't be an issue." The doubt in his eyes hardened into outright disbelief. The audience outside the glass partition grew bolder, their amusement more open. This was better than reality television. Alistair Finch made his entrance like a minor deity descending from Olympus. At 65, he was the living embodiment of generational wealth and unearned confidence. His suit was a Savile Row masterpiece. His mane of silver hair was perfectly coiffed, and his handshake, when he deigned to offer it, felt like an audit you were already failing. He didn't walk into the lounge. He took possession of it. "Ms. Rojas," he said, the syllables clipped and dismissive. He sat in the chair opposite her, creating an immediate and vast distance between them. "Brad tells me you're interested in our services. I have 5 minutes before my next appointment." "That's correct, Mr. Finch. I am looking to transfer a substantial portfolio and wanted to discuss Sterling, Finch's capabilities in emerging markets and tech sector incubators." Alistair's smile was a thin, bloodless line. It never came close to reaching his cold, blue eyes. "Ambitious. Tell me about your background, your experience with institutional-grade investment." The subtext was thick and suffocating. "Prove to me you belong in this room." "I've been a professional investor for over 2 decades, she began, but Alistair cut her off with an impatient wave of his hand. "Professional investor?" he scoffed. "What does that mean? Day trading from your kitchen table? A bit of crypto speculation?" The disdain in his voice was palpable. "No, private equity, venture capital, primarily focused on disruptive technologies and—" Alistair interrupted again, his assumptions solidifying into fact in his mind. "Ah, I see. One of those little boutique advisors. You handle small accounts for retail clients. That explains the confusion at the front desk." Tiffany materialized at his shoulder, as if summoned by his arrogance. "Mr. Finch, your 2 o'clock is here. The Hamilton Trust." "Of course." Alistair stood abruptly, his attention already completely withdrawn from Serafina. He had made his judgment, and the case was closed. "Ms. Rojas, I believe there has been a significant misunderstanding. Sterling, Finch and Associates is an institution that serves sovereign wealth funds, legacy family trusts, and ultra-high net worth individuals. We are simply not structured to handle smaller, less sophisticated accounts." "I mentioned a $100 million asset base." Alistair let out a short, sharp laugh. It was the cruelest sound she had heard all day. "My dear woman, people mention a lot of things. Listen, I am sure you are very good at what you do, in your particular sphere. But our client threshold is considerably higher than the figures you're throwing around. You would likely be far more comfortable at a firm that is better suited to your needs." The insult was designed to be a kill shot. Around them, the gathered employees were barely suppressing their smirks. Tiffany had her hand over her mouth, her shoulders shaking with silent laughter. "You might try a community bank in Dorchester," Alistair continued, his voice now taking on the patronizing cadence of someone explaining a complex topic to a simpleton. "They have wonderful programs specifically designed to help people from your demographic." The word demographic hung in the air like a poison gas. It was the final straw. Serafina rose slowly, every movement filled with a deliberate, lethal grace. She pulled out her phone again, her fingers flying across the screen. "Julian. Phase 2. Activate full protocols. They've burned every bridge." "Mr. Finch," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper that was somehow louder than a shout. "I want to be perfectly crystal clear about what has transpired here. For the last 2.5 hours, you and your staff have subjected me to a campaign of humiliation based on nothing more than my appearance and my name. You have dismissed my credentials without seeing them. You have questioned my legitimacy without evidence. And you have made recommendations based on racist and classist assumptions." Alistair's face hardened. "Now see here. I think you're being overly sensitive." "I am not being sensitive. I am stating facts." Serafina's voice was as steady and unyielding as the granite of the building itself. "You have made assumptions about my wealth, my education, my profession, and my background, all based on a prejudice so ingrained you are not even aware of it. Now you wait just a minute." Alistair sputtered, his face turning a blotchy red. "No," Serafina said, gathering her handbag with a chilling calm. "I am done waiting." She walked toward the door, pausing to turn back and face the entire, silent, gawking room. The smirk was gone from Tiffany's face, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. Brad looked uneasy for the first time. Even Alistair seemed momentarily thrown off balance. "The question you all should have asked, the question you were too arrogant and too ignorant to even consider," she said, her voice resonating with a newfound power, "is, do you have any idea who you're talking to? If you've ever felt this level of disrespect, if you've ever been judged before you even opened your mouth, I want you to hit that like button so hard it cracks your screen. Because the storm that's about to break over Sterling, Finch and Associates is for every single one of us. You need to stick around for this." The moment the elevator doors whispered shut, Alistair Finch was barking into his phone, his voice echoing with the fury of a king whose divine right had been challenged. "Security, get to the 25th floor now. We have a delusional woman making threats, refusing to leave. Escort her from the premises immediately and call the police. I want her charged with trespassing." At her desk, Tiffany was already typing furiously, updating the firm's client management software with a blacklist entry for Serafina Rojas. "Disruptive individual," she typed, a smug smile returning to her face. "Made false and unsubstantiated claims regarding assets. Attempted to intimidate senior staff. Possible con artist. Do not engage." But as she typed, her personal cell phone began to vibrate uncontrollably. Notifications were flooding her screen. An Instagram live video she had surreptitiously filmed of Serafina waiting in the lounge, which she had cleverly captioned, "Another wannabe trying to play with the big boys. Jastard broke on to go home," had exploded. In just the past hour, it had been viewed over 10,000 times. The comments were a horrifying tidal wave of disbelief and panic. "OMG, is that Serafina Rojas?" One user wrote. "Tiffany, you colossal idiot. That's one of the most powerful private equity investors in the country." "Do you know who that is? She's the Wraith of Wall Street. She's worth close to $1 billion. Tiffany's stomach clenched into a knot of pure ice. She scrolled frantically, seeing screenshots of Serafina's Forbes profile, links to articles in the Wall Street Journal detailing her legendary takeovers, a picture of her shaking hands with the president. Her blood ran cold. In the descending elevator, Serafina was on a call of her own, her voice a staccato of commands. "Julian, it's worse than we imagined. Full legal and media blitz. I want every recorded interaction transcribed, time-stamped, and sent to our litigation team. Contact the Compliance Division at the SEC and inform the Massachusetts Attorney General's office that we will be filing a formal multi-count complaint within the hour." Julian Croft's voice, on the other end, was the calm, lethal sound of a legal grandmaster. "Already in motion, Serafina. I have 4 associates reviewing the audio and video from your devices now. This is a textbook case. Blatant violations of fair practice regulations, multiple civil rights infringements, and enough documented systemic prejudice to bury them in lawsuits until the end of time." "I don't want to bury them, Julian," Serafina replied, a grim smile touching her lips. "I want to own them, and I already do." Back on the 25th floor, Alistair Finch's private line rang with a shrill insistence that signaled a call he could not ignore. It was Hamilton Fisk IV, patriarch of a family whose trust represented $3 billion of sterling, Finch's assets under management. "Alistair, my boy," the old man's voice crackled with urgency. "I'm calling about a rather disturbing video that's making the rounds. It appears to show your people mistreating Serafina Rojas." Alistair felt the temperature in the room drop by 20 degrees. "Serafina? Who?" "Rojas. Good God, man, don't you read the trades? Serafina Rojas, of Nightfall Capital. She's only the most successful turnaround specialist of the last decade. Alistair, for the love of God, please tell me you didn't just publicly humiliate one of the wealthiest and most connected women in global finance." The phone felt slick and heavy in Alistair's suddenly sweaty hand. "Hamilton, I assure you, there's been some sort of misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding, Alistair. I'm looking at the goddamn video right now. Your receptionist posted it herself, with a caption mocking her. This is going to be a bloodbath. It'll be on Bloomberg by lunch." Across the trading floor, a nervous energy was taking hold. Phones were buzzing. Algos were flagging unusual social media traffic related to the firm. Boston's financial world was a small, incestuous village, and news of this magnitude traveled faster than a market crash. Brad Peterson scurried towards Alistair's office, his face pale and clammy. "Sir, we may have a significant problem. The woman from earlier, she's not who we thought she was." "What are you talking about?" "Sir, she's Serafina Rojas, of Nightfall Capital. The Serafina Rojas who took a failing biotech firm and turned it into a $20 billion behemoth in 5 years. The one who advises 3 different sovereign wealth funds. The one who—" "Stop!" Alistair's voice was a strangled whisper. "Just stop talking." But Brad couldn't stop. The words poured out of him in a torrent of panicked realization. "Sir, her personal net worth is greater than this firm's entire market cap. She sits on the boards of 6 Fortune 500 companies, and we just told her to try a community bank in Dorchester." The crushing silence that followed was shattered by the frantic chime of a dozen incoming calls to the main switchboard. Alistair's assistant burst in without knocking, her face ashen. "Mr. Finch, it's a nightmare. The phones are lighting up. Reuters, the Associated Press, CNBC, they all want a statement about our client vetting policies and allegations of discrimination. And sir, the video is everywhere." Alistair looked at his own monitor. The hashtag #FontrakerSterlingShame was trending #1 on Twitter. The video, filmed by his own receptionist, had just crossed 500,000 views. And somewhere in his building, the woman they had all dismissed, mocked, and insulted was preparing to bring their entire world crashing down around them. The two burly security guards arrived in the lobby at the exact same time as two uniformed Boston police officers. The convergence of authority created a tense, theatrical tableau in the center of the cavernous marble hall. Alistair Finch, flanked by Brad, strode forward, his composure artificially restored by the presence of men with badges and guns. "Officers, thank you for your prompt arrival," Alistair announced, his voice booming with false confidence. "We have an individual in the building who has been making fraudulent claims and is now refusing to leave the property. A classic trespassing situation." Across the lobby, near the elevator bank, Serafina stood perfectly still. She held her phone up, not in a threatening way, but in the steady, unwavering grip of a documentarian. The live stream to a private server was now being watched by over 50,000 people, a number that was climbing exponentially. The entire global financial community was tuned in, watching the drama unfold in real time. Just then, the grand main doors swung open with a silent, imposing grace. A man stepped through, and the very atmosphere in the lobby seemed to compress. It was Julian Croft. At 65, Julian didn't just enter a room, he conquered it. He was the kind of lawyer legends are written about, a corporate shark so feared that CEOs fired their own boards rather than face him in court. His silver hair was immaculate, his bespoke suit was a work of art, and his presence radiated an aura of absolute, crushing power. He was followed by a team of 4 associates, 2 men and 2 women, who moved with the synchronized, menacing precision of a Special Forces unit. "Good afternoon, gentlemen." Julian's voice was a calm, resonant baritone that cut through the tension like a hot knife through butter. "I am Julian Croft, Senior Managing Partner of Croft, Sterling & Slate. I am here representing the Chief Executive Officer and majority shareholder of this institution." Alistair felt a knot of dread tighten in his gut. "That's not necessary. The CEO is standing right here. I am Alistair Finch." Julian smiled. It was not a pleasant sight. It was the smile a tiger gives before the kill. "Mr. Finch, you are the Chief Operating Officer, a title you hold, I might add, at the pleasure of the board, and you report directly to the CEO." He gestured with an open palm toward the woman standing by the elevators. "Allow me to formally introduce you to Ms. Serafina Rojas, the founder and CEO of Nightfall Capital, the parent company which, as of 3 months ago, holds a 72% controlling interest in Sterling, Finch, and Associates." The silence that descended upon the lobby was absolute. It was so profound it felt like a physical weight, pressing down, suffocating all sound. The security guards exchanged bewildered glances. The police officers looked from Alistair to Serafina, their hands hovering uncertainly near their belts, trying to figure out who exactly was in charge. Tiffany's phone, which she had been clutching in a death grip, slipped from her nerveless fingers and shattered on the marble floor. Julian continued, his voice the calm, measured cadence of a man reading an obituary. "Ms. Rojas acquired her majority stake through a series of tactical buyouts of your firm's distressed debt over the past 18 months, culminating in the complete acquisition of your parent holding company in August. She was appointed CEO by the new board of directors, a board she appointed 6 weeks ago. All of which is a matter of public record, if any of you had bothered to do your due diligence. One of Julian's associates stepped forward and tapped a tablet. Instantly, the massive digital display screen behind the reception desk, which usually showed market tickers, flickered to life. On it, in stark, undeniable detail, were the SEC filings, the certificate of incorporation, the board resolutions. And at the very top of the organizational chart, in bold 72-point font, were the words, Serafina Rojas, Chief Executive Officer. The blood drained from Alistair Finch's face, leaving it a pasty, grayish white. That's impossible. The CEO is supposed to be anonymous, a holding company. Supposed to be what, Mr. Finch? Serafina spoke for the first time, her voice slicing through the stunned silence like a shard of ice. Supposed to be a man? Supposed to be white? Supposed to be someone whose name you recognized? Someone you would immediately accept as belonging in a position of power? She walked forward, stepping into the center of the lobby. And as she moved, a subtle transformation occurred. Her posture shifted, her shoulders squared, and the quiet, understated woman who had walked in that morning was gone. In her place stood a titan, a woman who radiated an authority so absolute it was terrifying. Everyone in that lobby, from the police officers to the junior analysts, suddenly understood that they were in the presence of true power. Mr. Finch, she continued, her voice resonating with cold fury. For the last 3 hours, you and your staff have provided me with an invaluable, first-hand demonstration of the toxic, discriminatory, and frankly idiotic culture that has been allowed to fester within this institution. You have made business decisions based on bigotry. You have applied standards of service based on prejudice. And you have done it all in a building that I own, representing a company that is now mine. Alistair's mouth hung open, a silent, gaping O of horror. All around him, employees were frantically pulling out their phones, their fingers flying as they Googled her name. The sickening, dawning realization was spreading like a virus. The woman you dismissed as a wannabe, Julian intoned, currently manages a private equity fund worth over $30 billion. The woman you accused of being a con artist has been featured on the cover of every major financial publication on the planet. And for the past 6 weeks, she has been your boss. Julian handed Alistair a leather-bound folder. Inside was the firm's new organizational chart, and below Serafina's name was Alistair's, with a direct reporting line to her. Every major decision you have made in the last month required her sign-off, Julian said. Every bonus you approved, every client you signed, every policy you implemented. It all happened on her watch, and today you showed her exactly how you behave when you think she isn't watching. The police officers took a collective step back, holstering their weapons. They recognized a corporate execution when they saw one. This was no longer a matter for law enforcement. The security guards suddenly looked like lost children, unsure of whose orders to follow. And Alistair Finch, the proud, arrogant COO of Sterling, Finch and Associates, stood in the lobby of his own building, realizing with a soul-crushing certainty that he had just committed professional suicide, live-streamed to the entire world. Serafina's phone was buzzing relentlessly. CNN, Bloomberg, The Wall Street Journal. The story was breaking, and the shockwaves were already circling the globe. Now, Serafina said, her voice dropping to a dangerously quiet level, yet carrying to every corner of the silent, terrified lobby. I believe it is time for a performance review. The 42nd floor boardroom, a chamber that had seen $100 billion deals sealed, had never hosted a meeting like this. It felt less like a corporate gathering and more like a war crimes tribunal. Serafina sat at the head of the vast mahogany table, a position of power she now physically embodied. Julian Croft sat to her right, a silent, intimidating presence. Across from them, Alistair Finch, Brad Peterson, and Tiffany, who had been retrieved from the lobby in a state of near catatonia, sat in chairs that seemed to have transformed into electric chairs. The fallout was apocalyptic. Sterling shame was the #1 trending topic globally. The original video of the confrontation, coupled with the live stream of the lobby showdown, had been viewed over 5 million times. CNBC had suspended its regular programming for a special report titled Meltdown in Boston: Bigotry, Bias, and a Corporate Coup. Financial analysts were furiously debating the systemic failures at the heart of elite banking. "Let's begin with a clear recitation of the facts," Serafina said, her voice devoid of emotion. It was calm, clinical, and all the more terrifying for it. "At 9:30 this morning, I entered this building, my building, as a prospective client. For the subsequent 3 hours, I was subjected to a systematic pattern of discriminatory and humiliating treatment based on prejudicial assumptions about my race, my gender, and my economic status. This treatment was not only witnessed, but was actively documented and broadcast by your own staff." Tiffany made a small, strangled sound, like a dying animal. Her personal Instagram account had become a digital ground zero, a crater of global condemnation. The hashtag #Tiffany the Racist was trending right below Chonor Sterling shame. "Ms. Clark," Serafina said, addressing Tiffany by her last name, which she had learned from the employee file now displayed on a screen before her. "You used company time and company property to create and disseminate a social media post that mocked a client, violated our firm's privacy and social media policies, and exposed this company to catastrophic reputational and legal liability. Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Tiffany could only shake her head, tears carving paths through her carefully applied foundation. Alistair finally found his voice, though it was a weak, reedy thing. "Serafina, Ms. Rojas, I think if we can all just take a step back." "Ms. Rojas is my name," she corrected him, her voice like steel. "And there is nothing to discuss, Alistair. Your actions, all of your actions, have spoken far more eloquently than you ever could." Julian slid 3 identical, thick envelopes across the polished table. They landed in front of each of them with a soft, final thud. "Termination papers," Julian announced. "Effective immediately. Citing gross misconduct, willful violation of federal and state equal opportunity employment laws, failure to adhere to professional standards of conduct, and the creation of a hostile and discriminatory work environment." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "Mr. Finch, your employment with Sterling, Finch and Associates is terminated. You will be escorted from the building by security. Your personal effects will be boxed and couriered to your home. As of this moment, your access to all company systems, accounts, and properties has been irrevocably revoked." Alistair's face cycled through a spectrum of emotions: disbelief, rage, pleading, before settling on the gray pallor of defeat. "You can't do this. I have an employment contract, a severance package." "A contract which contains a standard morality clause and multiple anti-discrimination provisions, all of which you have spectacularly violated, on camera, for the entire world to see," Julian countered, his tone bored, as if explaining basic arithmetic. "Your termination is for cause. There will be no severance, no golden parachute, no laudatory press release, and given the very public nature of this scandal, I imagine your future employment prospects in this industry are, to put it mildly, non-existent." Outside the massive boardroom window, the scene on the street below was chaotic. News vans from every major network were double-parked, their satellite dishes aimed at the sky. A crowd of protesters had begun to gather. their numbers swelling by the minute, mobilized by social justice groups online. Their handmade signs were visible even from 42 floors up. Banking while brown? Shatter the glass ceiling. Accountability is overdue. Tiffany was openly sobbing now, a desperate hiccuping sound. I didn't know, she whispered, the words barely audible. I swear I didn't know who you were. That is the entire point, Ms. Clark, Serafina replied, her gaze unwavering and merciless. You treated me this way precisely because you didn't think I was anyone of consequence. Your cruelty was reserved for those you deemed beneath you. That doesn't make you an incompetent employee. It makes you a terrible human being. Brad, who had been silent until now, cleared his throat, a raw, nervous sound. Ms. Rojas, I want to apologize. I allowed my biases, my training to override my judgment. There is no excuse. Serafina studied him for a long, silent moment. Mr. Peterson, unlike them, you will not be terminated today. You are suspended without pay for 6 months. During that time, you will undergo intensive, one-on-one unconscious bias and sensitivity training with a firm of my choosing. Upon your return, you will be on probationary status for 2 years. A single complaint, a single misstep, and you are gone. Do you understand? It was a brutal punishment, but it wasn't a career execution. It was a sliver of a chance. Brad nodded, his face awash with a mixture of shame and profound relief. The financial and social repercussions were swift and devastating. Brittany Vander Sloot, the tech CEO from the Aspen Gala, saw her world implode. The newly viral videos of her accosting Serafina were now viewed in the context of the Sterling Finch incident. Investors, horrified by the display of arrogance and prejudice, began pulling their funding. Her board of directors convened an emergency meeting, and by the end of the week, Brittany had been forced into a humiliating resignation. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission launched a full-scale investigation into Sterling, Finch's hiring and promotion practices. The Attorney General's office announced a statewide review of client service protocols across the entire Boston financial sector. The shockwaves Serafina had created were forcing a long overdue reckoning. 2 weeks later, Serafina sat in that same boardroom, but the energy had been transformed. The fear was gone, replaced by a palpable sense of possibility and excitement. Sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating the faces of her new executive team. A diverse group of men and women she had recruited from the brightest, most overlooked corners of the financial world. A camera crew from 60 Minutes was discreetly setting up for a primetime interview, but before that, Serafina addressed her senior staff. Let me be clear, she began, her voice resonating with passion and purpose. What happened 2 weeks ago was not some elaborate undercover boss stunt. I did not orchestrate this to shame or punish individuals. I did it because I had to know the truth. I had to understand the true culture of the company I had just bought. And the truth was ugly. It was a culture that systematically failed to recognize value, talent, and potential in anyone who didn't fit a pre-approved, outdated mold. Her new head of human resources, a brilliant black woman named Dr. Alana James, nodded in agreement. The firm's new recruitment initiatives were already underway, creating partnerships with historically black colleges and universities, and sponsoring programs for first-generation students in finance. The changes we are making are not about retribution, Serafina continued, her voice rising. They are about revolution. We are launching a $200 million venture capital fund dedicated solely to businesses founded by women and people of color. We are completely overhauling our promotion system to eliminate implicit bias and create transparent pathways to leadership. We are going to build a new model for this industry, a model based on meritocracy, not mythology. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the faces in the room. Black, white, Asian, Latino, a true reflection of the world they lived in. Every single person in this room knows what it feels like to be underestimated. Every one of us has walked into a room and been judged before we spoke a word. The only difference is that I was in a position to force a consequence. Now all of you are in that position too. We have the power to change the rules of the game. The interview that evening was watched by 15 million people. Serafina, poised and powerful, spoke not with anger, but with the profound authority of someone who had turned pain into purpose. Discrimination isn't just morally bankrupt, she told the interviewer. It's a catastrophic business failure. When you value conformity over creativity, when you favor familiarity over innovation, you are leaving trillions of dollars on the table. You are missing out on the geniuses, the visionaries, and the leaders who will define the future. The companies that understand this will flourish. The ones that don't will become fossils. Your critics, the interviewer countered, say that you were too harsh, that you ruined lives over a simple mistake. Serafina's smile was patient, but her eyes were like flint. There was nothing simple about it. It wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. It was a series of hundreds of choices made over several hours, all rooted in the same prejudice. The consequences were a direct result of those choices. But ultimately, this isn't about Alistair Finch or Tiffany Clark. It's about the next brilliant young woman who walks into a bank seeking a loan. It's about the next immigrant entrepreneur with a world-changing idea. My hope, my entire goal, is that what I did makes their journey a little bit easier. The Nightfall Foundation launched the following month with a mission to fund educational and entrepreneurial opportunities for underserved communities. Dozens of other financial institutions, terrified of facing their own Serafina Rojas moment, signed on as partners, committing to internal reviews and policy changes. The incident became a required case study in the ethics curriculum at Harvard Business School. And across the country, in the lobbies of powerful institutions, receptionists began to look at every single person who walked through the door with a newfound sense of respect, and perhaps a little bit of fear. In the final segment of the broadcast, the interviewer asked the one question on everyone's mind. What would you say to the millions of people watching who have faced similar treatment, but who don't have $1 billion to fight back? Serafina looked directly into the camera lens, her gaze connecting with every single viewer who had ever been made to feel small, invisible, or unworthy. Document everything, she said, her voice a powerful call to arms. Trust your gut. Never, ever let anyone else define your worth. But above all, use your voice. Silence is the oxygen that bigotry needs to survive. Your story has power. Your truth has power. She leaned forward, her expression intense and compelling. Real power isn't about destroying your enemies. Real power is about building a better world. It's about using your platform, whatever it is, to open doors for others, to amplify silenced voices, to fix broken systems. Justice is not revenge. Justice is reconstruction. The screen behind her filled with information for the foundation, for legal aid societies, for mentorship programs. But it was her final words that would echo long after the broadcast ended. The question isn't whether you have power. We all have some form of it. The question is, what will you do with it? Will you be a gatekeeper, or will you be a bridge builder? This is your moment. This is our moment. This is where we change the world. Together. This story, this incredible display of power and principle, is about more than just one woman's revenge. It is a blueprint for change. If you were inspired, if you felt that fire in your gut, then I need you to join this movement. Share this video with everyone you know. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell because our work is just beginning. And let me know in the comments, What is one thing you will do this week to use your power for good? Thank you for watching. And now, let's get to work.